My name is Ria Navarro, 27 years old from Seattle, Washington. I always thought my family was just complicated. Until my mother died, and a stranger slipped me a note at her funeral. That's when I learned the truth. My father wasn't a businessman. He was a cartel king in disguise. And I was never meant to survive what came next. If you love stories filled with dark secrets, family betrayal, and revenge that cuts deep, this one's for you. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single twist. Now, let's begin. It had rained on and off all week, but that morning, it felt wrong. The clouds hung lower than usual, heavy like they knew a secret. Even the breeze had teeth. I stood under a black umbrella beside my mother's casket, hands trembling, trying to match the stillness everyone else managed to wear so easily. My mother, Elena Navarro, had been pronounced dead 3 days earlier from a sudden aneurysm, natural causes, they'd said. But nothing about this felt natural. Not the way my uncles kept glancing around like they expected someone to show up. Not the way my father's jaw stayed clenched the entire time, like he was furious she'd dared to die. The funeral was small, just family, a few of my mother's old clients from her boutique, and people I didn't recognize but somehow knew were watching me more than the coffin. My father, Elias, said few words at the service. He didn't even pretend to grieve. He spoke like he was reading a report, his voice flat, clipped, and hollow. When he finished, Uncle Remy stepped forward to say a prayer. He looked older than I remembered, skin sunken, suit hanging off his bones like it belonged to a different man. His voice cracked at the end, just once, and that moment stuck with me like a sliver under the skin. As the service ended, people filed out slowly, murmuring the usual things. "So sorry for your loss, she was a wonderful woman, let us know if you need anything." I nodded, thanked them, felt like I was watching from outside my own body. That's when Uncle Remy leaned in during our embrace and whispered, "Check your left coat pocket. Don't read it here." I froze. He pulled away like nothing had happened and joined the others beneath the cluster of black umbrellas. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my face still. When I slipped my hand into the pocket, my fingers grazed folded paper, thick, like a card, not something that had just drifted in on accident. I waited until I was alone, back in my car, the windows fogging with grief and condensation. I locked the doors before opening the note. "If you're reading this, your mother didn't die of an aneurysm." She was silenced. "Go to the green door storage on Pike. Ask for locker 117. Don't tell your father. Don't trust anyone." There was no signature. I read it again. And again. My mouth had gone dry, my throat thick. I looked up and saw my father speaking with 2 men in suits near the hearse. He smiled, just slightly, and for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know the man who raised me. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But it wasn't just rain anymore, it was warning. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat at the edge of my bed. The note unfolded on my lap, my eyes scanning the words like they might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. But they didn't. My mother had been silenced. And Uncle Remy wanted me to find out why. By dawn, I had made up my mind. If this was some sick joke, I needed to know. If it wasn't, then I had already waited too long. Green Door Storage sat on a slope off Pike Street, squeezed between a boarded-up nail salon and a convenience store with bars on the windows. The green paint on the sign was peeling, and the fluorescent lights inside buzzed like they were clinging to life. The woman at the front desk didn't even ask questions when I gave her the locker number, 117. She repeated, eyes briefly flicking up to study me. "You sure?" I nodded. She handed me the key. "Down the left corridor. Last unit on the right." My footsteps echoed in the hollow hallway as I moved deeper into the building. The air was damp, metallic. Each door I passed felt like it held something forgotten, or something someone wanted forgotten. Locker 117 was scratched and dented, its lock rusting around the edges. My hand hesitated on the key, but I forced it in and twisted. Inside, the unit was almost empty. No furniture, no boxes. Just one object sat in the center of the concrete floor, a worn black duffel bag, zipped up and coated with a thin layer of dust. I knelt and opened it. Inside were manila folders, some brittle with age, others newer. I pulled out the top file and opened it. Photos. Surveillance photos. Grainy, time-stamped shots of men exchanging briefcases, cars unloading at shipping docks, stacks of cash. And then, faces I recognized. My father. My uncles. Even Micah. In another folder, I found wire transfers. Port schedules, encrypted ledgers. All tied to Navarro shipping. Except this wasn't shipping freight, it was a front, it was a drug pipeline. My heart raced as I dug deeper. One envelope was marked with my mother's handwriting, for Rhea. Inside was a birth certificate. My eyes locked on the name, Isadora Mendez, mother, Elena Mendez, father, unknown. I stared at it, my breath shallow. I flipped it over. A faded hospital stamp, Guadalajara, Mexico. My hands trembled as I whispered aloud, who the hell am I? I had no memory of ever living in Mexico. I had no reason to believe I wasn't Rhea Navarro. But this paper, this one fragile piece of truth, said otherwise. My name, my family, my entire past. It was all built on a lie, and if my mother had hidden this from me, if she'd run from the Navarro name, then she hadn't died naturally, she'd been hunted. Suddenly, the silence of the storage unit felt suffocating. I zipped up the duffel and stood. It was time to find out what else had been buried with her. I sat in my apartment with the duffel bag open on the floor like a wound I couldn't close. Documents were spread across the carpet, photos, bank statements, old invoices from Navarro shipping. Every scrap pointed to one undeniable truth: my father wasn't just hiding something. He was something. The name Elias Navarro yielded nothing out of the ordinary when I ran a search online. A few press mentions about local business awards, a donation to a waterfront renovation project. The image of a respectable man. Safe. Clean. But then I searched Emilio Navarro. That name cracked the world open. The first article I found was a 10-year-old investigative piece, mostly scrubbed from the web but archived on a Chilean news blog. It mentioned the Navarro Cartel, one of Mexico's most elusive trafficking rings. Drugs, weapons, money laundering. The article named Emilio Navarro as its heir after his father disappeared in a boating accident that clearly wasn't accidental. The photo was blurry, taken from a distance, but I'd know that face anywhere. It was my father, younger, clean-shaven, standing beside a man with an AK-47 slung over his shoulder. The caption read, "Alleged Navarro heir seen in Veracruz port, 1997. I scrolled further, finding government reports, forums, rumors. It was always the same story: Emilio Navarro vanished in the early 2000s. Some said he was dead. Others believed he'd paid for a new identity and fled to the US under a false name. Elias Navarro wasn't my father's name. It was his disguise. My blood ran cold. I pulled my laptop closer and tried accessing immigration records, but anything before 2002 was either blocked or mysteriously redacted. The names of my uncles, Remy, Sergio, and Dario, yielded almost nothing. No marriage records, no birth certificates. Like they had all emerged from thin air around the same time, they hadn't just left their pasts behind, they'd erased them. The question now wasn't if Elias Navarro was Emilio Navarro, it was what he was doing in Seattle. And why my mother had chosen to stay married to him all these years. I dug through the papers again and found a letter written in my mother's slanted cursive. It was unsigned, never sent. Dated 5 years ago. I should have left sooner. She's growing up with his eyes. I can't keep lying to her, not forever. One day she'll ask, and I don't know what I'll say. God forgive me for staying. I closed my eyes, the betrayal cutting deeper than I expected. My mother had stayed, maybe to protect me. Maybe out of fear. But she'd lived in silence, and died with secrets, and Elias. Emilio, whatever name he went by, he wasn't the man I thought he was. He wasn't just a liar. He was a ghost wrapped in a father's face, and I was done living under his shadow. I hadn't seen Micah in over 4 years. He vanished from our lives without explanation, no goodbye, no phone call. Just gone. I remembered the way my father used to talk about him afterward, as if he were dead weight finally cut loose. Now I understood why. Micah wasn't just estranged, he escaped. I found his name on a lease tied to a condo in Belltown. It was under Michael R. Navarro, but the address checked out. High-rise building. Security desk. Concierge who barely glanced at me when I said I was family. I rode the elevator up with shaking hands. My reflection in the polished steel walls didn't look like me, wild eyes, pale skin, jaw locked tight. I hadn't eaten in almost a day. I knocked 3 times. Nothing, then a 4th knock, and the door opened a crack. Just enough for me to see a gun. "Rhea?" he asked, voice low and sharp. "Yeah," I whispered. "It's me." Micah stepped back slowly, eyes darting down the hallway before letting me in. He looked harder than I remembered. Muscular, pale, scars just barely hidden by the collar of his t-shirt. He hadn't shaved in days. The blinds were drawn, the apartment dark except for the bluish glow of surveillance monitors on the kitchen counter. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked. "Does your father know?" "No," I said. "And he won't." He watched me a moment, then sighed. "You found the bag, didn't you?" I nodded. Micah didn't ask what was inside. He just poured 2 glasses of whiskey and set one in front of me. "Remy said if you ever came around," he began, "I was supposed to tell you the truth." I gripped the glass but didn't drink. "Your mother wasn't from Seattle. She wasn't Elena Navarro. Her real name was Elena Mendez. She was a bookkeeper for the Navarro cartel back in Guadalajara. She met Emilio, your father, before he was fully in charge. When she got pregnant, she tried to get out." My voice cracked. "Why didn't she run then?" "She did," Micah said. "She disappeared for a few years. Changed her name. Had you. But he found her. Brought her back. Told her if she didn't cooperate, he'd take you and raise you himself." I felt sick. "She made a deal," he said. "She'd play wife. She'd keep quiet. In exchange, you'd be safe." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "And the ledger?" Micah's face tightened. "That ledger could take down the whole Navarro network. She took it when she ran. He spent years looking for it. Still is. And now he thinks I have it," I whispered. Micah nodded. "Your mom died because he thought she was finally talking. And if he thinks you know where it is," he didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. I understood. I wasn't just in danger, I was next. "The ledger was never a book," Micah said, eyes fixed on the monitors as if expecting someone to break through the door any second. "At least not anymore. The last version your mom kept was digital. Compact. Portable. Small enough to vanish." I stared at him. "Then where is it?" He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "That's the part one don't know. But your mother wouldn't have let it out of her sight. She knew what it was worth, what it could do." I sat back on the worn leather couch, mind racing. The files I'd found in the duffel were detailed, damning, but they only scratched the surface. The real evidence, the root system of the Navarro cartel, was still out there. Hidden. Protected. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. 2 weeks before she died, my mother had given me a wrapped gift. No reason. No birthday. Just handed it to me while making tea, smiling in that way she did when she was proud but trying not to show it. Inside had been an old sketchpad. "I thought you might like this again," she said. I hadn't used it since high school, back when I thought I'd become an artist. I'd thanked her and shoved it into my closet. Forgotten it completely, until now. I left Micah's apartment with the kind of urgency that made pedestrians glare as I ran through the Belltown drizzle, heart pounding harder with every step. When I reached my building, I bolted up the stairs 2 at a time and tore through my bedroom closet. There it was, wedged between a shoebox and a pile of old sweaters. The spine cracked as I flipped it open. The pages were blank. Clean. Too clean. I turned to the back cover and ran my fingers along the inner binding. That's when I felt it, an unnatural bump along the cardboard edge. My hands trembled as I peeled back the fabric. Taped inside, hidden beneath the liner, was a tiny black microSD card, no label, no markings, just truth, condensed. I slid it into my laptop and held my breath as the files loaded. Dozens of folders. Hundreds of encrypted documents. Transaction logs, offshore bank accounts, internal communications, photos of shipments, buyer lists, and, worse, names, so many names, council members, police officers, business executives, judges, people I'd seen on television. Shaking hands with my father. Accepting bribes. Laundering blood money. This wasn't just a record, it was a blueprint for the entire Navarro Empire, and it was mine now. I copied the contents to a secure cloud and yanked the card from the drive. If anyone found me, this tiny sliver of plastic, would be what they came for. My mother had risked everything to protect it, to protect me, and now, it was my move. I couldn't sleep. The microSD card sat on my nightstand like it was ticking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face the way it looked in the casket, too pale, too still, like something important had been ripped from her before she could say goodbye. Now I knew why. She hadn't just been my mother. She had been a fugitive, a whistleblower, and a woman with enough courage to run from the Navarro cartel. She tried to give me a normal life, tried to love the daughter of the man who hunted her, and it got her killed. I sat at my desk for hours, staring at the files I'd copied from the SD card. It was all there, routes, names, amounts, payoffs. Page after page of rot beneath the surface of everything I thought was real. My father's empire stretched across oceans, but its roots were buried in my childhood. I couldn't count how many birthday parties had been funded with blood money. I was the daughter of a cartel patriarch. I was the daughter of a murdered woman. I was done pretending. I created an anonymous Proton Mail account, set up a secure VPN, and wrote a short, blunt message. If anything happens to me, these files go everywhere. Attached, proof of Seattle-based cartel operations, corrupt city officials, and false identity documents tied to Emilio Navarro, currently living under alias Elias Navarro. Then I attached a single folder, one with a few financial records and a single damning image, my father, in a Veracruz port yard, shaking hands with a known trafficker. I hit send. The first wave went to local investigative journalists. The second to a small but persistent blog that had tried to expose Navarro shipping years ago. The third went to a South American watchdog group. I didn't send everything. Not yet. This was bait. A warning shot. By morning, the first story had broken. Anonymous source leaks evidence of cartel activity in Seattle shipping firm. The photo made the front page of 3 different outlets. I watched my father's face show up in my newsfeed, looking just as I remembered him, composed, confident, untouchable. Only now, cracks were beginning to form. I knew better than to think he'd be surprised. He'd see the leak and start running scenarios, suspecting everyone. And eventually, he'd figure it out. He'd know it was me. But for once, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. Angry that he stole my mother's life. Angry that he raised me in a lie. Angry that he thought I'd stay quiet forever. He wanted loyalty. He should have earned it. Now, I was done being Ria Navarro, the obedient daughter. I was Isadora Elena Mendez, and I was going to bring him down piece by piece, lie by lie, until his empire burned. The warehouse on Pier 12 had been abandoned for years, at least officially. Everyone in the family knew better. It was where deals went down quietly, away from the city's eyes, tucked between fog, freight, and shadows. And tonight, I was walking straight into it. I had sent the message to my father 2 days earlier. Just one line: we both lost her. I don't want this to end badly. Meet me at Pier 12. Midnight. Alone. I knew he wouldn't come alone. He never did, but I wouldn't be alone either. Micah met me an hour before, parked in a nondescript black van 2 blocks away. Inside were 3 plainclothes agents, federal, not local. Micah didn't trust the Seattle PD. Too many had Navarro blood in their pockets. They'll move the second he gives us something solid. One agent said, checking the feed from the hidden mic in my necklace. Do not provoke him. stall, and keep your hands visible. I gave a tight nod. My palms were slick, my mouth dry, but my eyes were fire. Micah caught my arm before I stepped out. You're sure about this? He took her from me, I said. He doesn't get to keep his kingdom too. The wind off Elliott Bay sliced through my jacket as I approached the rusted warehouse. One overhead lamp flickered above the loading dock. Just enough light to feel exposed. I walked into the mouth of the beast. Emilio, was already waiting. Dressed in a charcoal coat, black gloves, and that same expressionless mask he always wore when something was about to die. My daughter, he said smoothly, as if we were meeting for brunch. I didn't return the greeting. You got my message. I did. I wasn't sure if it was really you, he said, tilting his head. I figured you'd run. Like Mom did? He smiled. Just slightly. I know you leaked something, he said, stepping closer. But it's not enough to hurt me. You're scared, confused. I understand that. We can still fix this. He reached into his coat, slowly. My breath caught, but it was just a folded sheet of paper. He tossed it at my feet. Plane ticket. One way to Argentina. New identity. A clean break. You leave tonight, and this all disappears. I looked down at the ticket. Then back at him. You killed her, I said, voice steady. You can't buy your way out of that. He took one more step forward, and that's when the red dot danced across his chest. His eyes flicked to the rafters, then to the far end of the dock, where agents began flooding in, guns drawn. Emilio didn't run, he just looked at me, disappointed, like I'd failed him. But for the first time, I saw him for what he really was, not a father, not a man, just a monster who raised me in a cage and called it home. And now, that cage was collapsing. The agents closed in fast, boots pounding across the dock, weapons raised, voices shouting commands in sync. My father stood eerily calm, his hands lifted halfway, as if surrendering was just another move in a long game. Then, from the shadows behind him, two of his men emerged, bodyguards, just as I'd expected. Dressed in black, their weapons glinted under the flickering overhead light. They didn't aim at the agents, they aimed at me. Time slowed, I froze. One wrong move, and I was dead, but before they could pull the triggers, two shots cracked through the air. The bodyguards dropped where they stood. Blood pooled under them like shadows. Everyone turned. Uncle Remy stepped into the light, gun still raised, smoke trailing from the barrel. His face was hard, lined with regret, eyes shining with something I couldn't quite read. I told you to come alone, Elias, he said. My father's face twisted, not with fear, but betrayal. You? He said, voice low, almost amused. Of all people. I gave Elena my word, Remy said. When you brought her back from Mexico. I knew you'd never let her go. But I also knew she had one chance, Ria. My throat clenched. He had known. All this time, Elias slowly turned his head toward me, eyes narrowing. You think this is justice? He hissed. You think they'll let you live in peace after this? After what you've started? Federal agents shouted for him to get on the ground, but he didn't move. Not yet, you are Navarro blood, he said, stepping closer, voice suddenly low and cold, just for me. You can delete files. You can give them names. But you will never wash me out of you. One day, you'll look in the mirror and see me. And when that day comes, I hope you finally understand what it means to carry a name that everyone fears. Then he dropped to his knees, hands behind his head. Agents swarmed him, pinning his arms and dragging him toward the vans waiting at the edge of the pier. His face was expressionless again, mask back on, as if this was just another transaction, but his words lingered, sharp as knives. Uncle Remy holstered his gun and approached me slowly. I should have done something sooner, he said quietly. I waited too long to grow a conscience. I shook my head, unable to speak. My legs felt like they were made of glass. Remy looked me in the eye. He's not done. You know that, right? His reach. It doesn't stop with a prison cell. I know, I whispered. The night air was thick with salt and smoke. The lights blurred in my vision as adrenaline drained from my body. Elias Navarro, Emilio, was finally in custody, but the war my mother started wasn't over, not yet, and I wasn't running. 6 months after the sting at Pier 12, the Navarro name no longer commanded fear, it invited subpoenas. The empire my father built on silence and blood had fractured. His businesses were seized. Accounts frozen. Allies either vanished or flipped under pressure. Every week, another name from the ledger went public, an official, a broker, a smuggler, a judge. Each one collapsing like a domino set in motion by my mother's final act of defiance, and mine, Elias Navarro, Emilio Navarro, was locked in a federal prison in Colorado, awaiting trial under armed guard. His face no longer graced headlines. Instead, it sat behind a gray jumpsuit and glass walls, where even his words were recorded, monitored, and stripped of their power. He hadn't spoken to me since that night, but I knew he was watching. Every time a new article came out under my name, every time a podcast mentioned the girl who took down her father's cartel, I imagined him reading it. Jaw tight, cold rage burning behind his dead eyes. I hoped it hurt. Legally, I changed my name back to the one my mother had given me at birth, Isadora Elena Mendez. It was the name of a survivor. A fighter. A daughter who'd reclaimed her life piece by piece, but it came with weight. Sometimes, I still dream of the dock. Of blood on concrete and my father's voice whispering that I'd never escape him. Some mornings I wake up gasping, unsure where I am. I check my locks 3 times before bed. I keep a burner phone in my nightstand. Micah lives 2 floors below me now, just in case. Paranoia, maybe. Or instinct, but I won't let fear control me again. Instead, I speak. I've told my story, anonymously at first. Then openly. Survivors from cartel families, whistleblowers, daughters like me, they write to me. They call. They ask how I found the courage. I don't tell them I was brave. I tell them I was angry. I tell them I was done. There's a photo of my mother on my desk. Not the one from her funeral, not the one framed in our hallway growing up. This one is old, faded, taken before we came to Seattle. She's smiling, holding a baby in her arms. Me. That version of her, the real Elena Mendez, is who I fight for now. Her voice was silenced. Mine won't be. The last time I visited the pier, the rain fell just like it had that night. The warehouse was locked and abandoned, its gates rusted shut. But I stood there anyway, soaking in the cold, knowing that this place, this city, no longer belonged to him, it belonged to me. I'm not just the daughter of a cartel king, I'm the woman who burned his kingdom down. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Stories like this remind us that blood doesn't define us, choices do. If you felt the weight of Ria's journey, or if you've ever had to face the truth about your own family, you're not alone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. And if this one hit home, leave a comment below, let's talk about it. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, some secrets are meant to be exposed.